battling for about 10 years at that point. Addictions. I had been in jail. I was bankrupt at 21. I was massively in debt and didn't have any friends. And I woke up Easter morning surrounded by probably 15 guys in my buddy's basement. And in that moment, I have never heard God's voice more clear to me. And it wasn't an audible, but it was in my heart, man. And it was like, dude, you're going to go down this path that's going to end your life real quick if you don't start making some changes. And in that moment, I decided to give up everything. I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. I want to find guys that are have great relationships in their marriage. They have great relationships with God. They have great, business relationships. How do I do what they're doing? And so if you're feeling low, you're feeling like just depleted, you've got to get uncomfortable, go put yourself somewhere where you can surround yourself with people that are living the life that you want to live.
Throughout our lives, there are going to be moments that reveal who we are as men. And it is in those moments where our decisions that set the course for what we will ultimately encounter. These can be and are defining moments, defining in a sense of what they have revealed. See, the challenge becomes discerning the lessons learned and then allowing them to shape the men we are today. And in today's episode, we're going to spend some time unpacking how we can use these lessons learned to transform our lives without allowing our past to hold us into an outdated paradigm. Now, in the meantime, if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, husband, and entrepreneur, I encourage you to participate in our Band of Brothers group mentorship program. We're a group of ordinary guys working towards living extraordinary lives. You can find all this information at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Are there lessons in the past that are still serving you today? And if they are not, what can you do to rewrite the story to create the more empowering lesson? So much of our daily lives are shaped by our past, consciously or unconsciously. And these lessons are either moving us forward or holding us back from living our full potential. And my guest today is no stranger to life's hard lessons. Allow me to introduce my guest. Erik Allen is truly a man of integrity, a work ethic, and an overcomer. Growing up with a complicated childhood and a broken home, to raising himself from the age of 14. Now, unfortunately, Erik found trouble along the way, and as he desperately tried to fill the gaps with voids that was creating a void in his life, and as a young man, he found himself empty and tired of settling for less. And after a feverish pursuit of the Holy Spirit, Erik decided to surrender and trust the one that would never, ever let him down. Today, Erik and his wife have nearly 16 plus years, and their 2 children live in Northern Idaho, living a blessed life. He's also a certified John Maxwell Coach and host of the top-rated MMA podcast in the Northwest, the Erik Allen Show. Welcome to the show, Erik. How are things today, my brother?
Oh, man, things are going great. Thank you so much for having me on your show, man. Truly an honor to be here.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for your connecting with you and getting an opportunity for us to have a chat today.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Such a good, man. The last conversation that you and I had, man, was so good. And so I'm so excited to be here on your show, man. So really excited.
Right on. Well, in my work here with the Awakened Man, we always talk about all of us being on our own hero's quest or our hero's journey, right? Now, I have to say your story is pretty incredible. So this is the first question I really want to expand. I kind of teased our audience a little bit about it, but tell us about a particular time in your life when you were truly challenged. Maybe you felt lost and knew things had to change. What did you do? And how did that experience shape you into the man you are today and the work that you're doing?
If we go back to that moment where I was truly lost, I was in my early 20s. I was living out in Seattle area, and I had been battling for about 10 years at that point. Addictions. I had been in jail. I was bankrupt at 21. I was massively in debt and didn't have any friends. And I was working in the music industry, and it was a dream job of mine to be in the music industry. I worked for Universal Records for a year in downtown Seattle. And man, I loved it. I was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week, and I was, open tab, living the rock star lifestyle without being a rock star. And then I got laid off And this is around the time of Napster, if people remember Napster, but it killed the music industry. And I was the bottom guy on the totem pole at the office. So I was one of the few guys that got let go. And it really put me into a depression. I was working at Starbucks at night, and I would get off work and go to this grocery store, grab a 6-pack of beer, go rent a video at a movie store, go back to my ghetto apartment and drink myself to sleep every night. That was my daily routine. I had lost all of my hope. I had lost all my dreams at that point. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to work at Starbucks. There was a moment when a girl walked into Starbucks, and she'd been in a couple of times, but she doesn't drink coffee. She was just studying. And she had enough courage in 20 seconds to walk up to me and said, hey, we've got a cool college age event down in our church. Would you be interested in going? Now I'm depressed. I have no friends. She's good looking. Yep. What time do I need to be there? That's what's going through my mind at that point, you know? And so I go down to this church event, and I run into these guys that I had known 4 or 5 years earlier on the other side of the state. I grew up in the eastern side of Washington, Seattle, obviously on the other side. And I was like, man, I haven't seen you guys forever. What are you doing here? You know? And so we got to chat, and I think that God was planting a seed in me in that moment. It was about a month later, it was Easter 2004. I went out and I was partying with a band that I was managing. And I woke up Easter morning surrounded by probably 15 guys in my buddy's basement. And in that moment, I have never heard God's voice more clear to me. And it wasn't an audible, but it was in my heart, man. And it was like, dude, you're going to go down this path that's going to end your life real quick if you don't start making some changes. And in that moment, I decided to give up everything. I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I text that girl and I said, hey, maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. Thank you for inviting me to that church event. And a month later, we were dating, and now we've been married for 18 years here in 2023.
Man, outstanding. There are no accidents in life, truly, there are none. People are brought into our lives sometimes for a season and sometimes for much longer. And it sounds like your angel showed up just in the time that you needed her. Isn't that true?
Oh man, absolutely. I call her that all the time, man. She is my guardian angel that came in and swooped me up at the lowest of the low that I was at, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, listen, what would you tell somebody right now? I know you do a bunch of work with men as well. So what would you tell someone right now who's in their bad situation, but doesn't know how to get out of it? What would you do? What would you say to them today?
Man, you got to change the environment. If you want to change a life moment at all, if you're stuck in a bad relationship or stuck in a bad work or stuck in a bad mental place, right? You've got to change the environment. And that's what I had to do when I decided to quit drinking and quit doing drugs. I had to change the environment. And I replaced that environment with guys that were going to the church. And I started asking guys that were going to church. This was like pre-podcast days, but I feel like I was podcasting then, right? Like I was like, I want to take you out to Starbucks and I want to understand your story. I want to find guys that are have great relationships in their marriage. They have great relationships with God. They have great, business relationships. How do I do what they're doing? And so if you're feeling low, you're feeling like just depleted, you've got to get uncomfortable, go put yourself somewhere where you can surround yourself with people that are living the life that you want to live. And yeah, that sucks at first, but the more that you do it, the easier it's going to get. And even if you just show up and talk for 10 minutes and walk out, that's fine, but go back, right? But get around people that are going to lift you up. Ed Milet, I talked to him on my show. Like he mentions a kind of a thing where he says, hey, if you're walking around at 80 degrees, you've got to go find guys that are walking around at 120. Because if you're walking around those guys, it's going to lift your temperature up and they're going to start to motivate and inspire you to be better. So look, man, if you're in this bad spot in your life right now, get out of that spot by changing your environment and go surround yourself with people that are living the life you want to live.
Yeah, I totally love that. And the thing I wrote down was mentors. In a word, is to find those mentors, right? And I think the challenge with a lot of guys is that we have so much pride, and it's a mix of pride and yet self-deprecating talk in our minds, right? We're too prideful to go out and take the steps that we need to do, yet we're more willing to listen, to beat ourselves down. And I think that's really part of what your journey, your hero's journey was all about, was being able to find that moment and I know for you, it was having God come into your heart. And I think for a lot of guys that we don't recognize, I'm so proud to hear you say that, because more men need to understand that we're here for a purpose. And our purpose is to serve in the best way that we can. And unless we're unwilling to understand that means that we have to be connected with something that's much greater than us, and whatever you want to call that, for you, that's fine for me.
Yep.
But you need to have that connection, man. And if you can't find that, then I think that's where we struggle as men. And what are your thoughts on that piece?
Yeah, I agree, man. I think we are here there's a purpose and a plan for all of our lives. And some of our journeys are harder than others, and some of our journeys are way different than others, right? But that's okay, because those tough times make us tougher. And as we go through life, we're going to experience, sadness. We're going to experience anger. But as men, we need to go and step out of that and go, man, there is a purpose and a plan on my life. There's a reason why I'm going through this. I love Ed Milet, so I refer to him a lot, but he says, this is happening for me, not to me, right? So if we acknowledge that, if we learn a lesson in those moments of despair, those moments of like tragedy, those moments of pain and suffering, right? What are we supposed to be learning in that moment? Because then we can go and teach other men or other people how to get through that. I look back and I can go, man, yeah, my life sucked, man. It was brutal and I had to do this and that. But once I realized that my past and other people's opinions don't define my future, that's when the doors of opportunities opened up for me to make a bigger impact. And that's when I was like, man, I cannot be the victim. I'm not going to be the victim mentality moving forward. I am starting fresh. I'm going to break the chains of divorce, abuse, rejection, addiction, and my kids will never experience the childhood that I ever had. So I have a bigger purpose. My purpose is to break those chains, but then create a new legacy for the Allen tribe moving forward forever.
Love that, brother. Love that. Now, listen, I know your work's expanded into a media company, right? With podcasting and webinars. And I think, and also you started another organization called Operation Life. And with that, you just finished doing the Rise Global Conference. And I thought we'd spend some time to talk about what the conference was about, what were the goals of it, and how did it all come to be?
Yeah, the Rise Global Conference. So I work with a buddy of mine named Ian Inman. He's actually the founder of Operation Life. I was just helping him launch it, but such a great organization, and he wants it to be the number one Christian environment in the world at some point, right? Like he wants to build this thing up. And so I was helping him with this event, and we brought in Jim the Rookie Morris. If you've seen the movie The Rookie, it's based off of his story. We brought in several other speakers that are well known in the entrepreneur space. They're pastors, they're podcasters, and we just wanted to bring in these guys that we could lift up, men that have been part of this Operation Life group. We wanted to speak life into them, real life, not like the millionaire gurus that are saying, come in and buy all this stuff. These are real dudes that have real stories. And even myself, being a host of that event, like I took massive notes, and I was like, it impacted me tons. Like after that event, I sat back and went, all right, where are my priorities right now? Like I need to start changing things around. And so really the purpose of that event was to make sure that the men that were part of that, that they were understood that they can be real men. Like there's a purpose and a plan. And if they're married and they have kids, like put them first, family first, man, like God, and then family first, right? In my eyes. And so a lot of times we as men, we want to just be this provider. We want to go out and we go hard and we hustle and we grind, right? To make sure that we're providing for our family. But that gets in the way of our family a lot of times. And that's where we start to see divorce and bad marriages happen and things like that. And so that message, that conference was really about, hey, men, we need to be men and we need to provide for our family, but our family comes first. Like God will provide the money, but put your family first and make that your purpose. And man, it was a great conference. And I think what Ian will do with Operation Life is tremendous. And I think it'll continue to blow up.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great concept for a global conference. And I'm looking forward to seeing those. I did get an opportunity to sign up and would have liked to have participated a little bit more than I did. I just thought it was such a great concept and idea. And there's so many of these other types of webinars, but the focus of this on Christian men, especially. And what I really liked, as we talked about in the intro here, about really shifting your paradigm. Yeah. Getting right with what is for yourself as a man. And that to me means a lot of different things. It is about getting the priority, God first, family second. And then whatever else after that is, for you is for you.
Yeah.
But, on top of that, it's also getting the mindset right and understanding that as a man, like how are you defining yourself and how are you setting up and are you leading? And how are you leading your family? And are you working as a me person or as a we person, especially when it comes with family, right? And I think that work with that Rise Global and the work that you're doing as well is It's phenomenal. So, man, keep up that great work.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Now, when did you realize that? Because you talked earlier about, you were doing some interviews with folks and that, and really, kind of, getting mentors and that. But when did you realize that podcasting was going to be a passion for you?
It was funny. I used to have a company called Top Rated MMA. It was an apparel company that my wife and I started in 2012. And it was really the era of tap out, right? And so I was like, oh, I want to start an MMA apparel company. And I convinced my wife to borrow, $2,500 from her brother to help start this company. And we didn't have any idea what we were doing. We just bought a bunch of stuff that didn't sell. And, we sold some, but nothing like profitable. And about 2015, I got bored with the company. I literally just stopped making stuff and I was losing money, but I wasn't ready to give up that name. And so I kind of spent the next year and a half to try to figure out, like, how do I keep this thing going? And so I started an MMA podcast called the Top Rated MMA Podcast. And I was just interviewing up and coming fighters. Some were UFC fighters, some were amateur fighters. But my main purpose, my goal around that was to ask them, why do you want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? Like, that was the one question that I wanted to ask them. And it just grew around kind of this grassroots exposure. And we ended up being the number one MMA podcast out here in the Northwest. I was interviewing people from all over the world. And I ran that show up until December of 2021. I'd recorded 256 episodes of that podcast. I had no idea what I was doing. So I started this thing. I was recording on what you call, I think it's Ecamm or FaceTime. And essentially what I was doing was taking that video and uploading it to YouTube, sharing that link out to Facebook and calling it my podcast. And I was about 100 episodes in between that show and then my other show I started in 2019, which is the Erik Allen Show. But someone said, well, how can I listen on Apple? And I was clueless. I said, what the hell is that? I didn't even know what Apple Podcast was at that point. And so I was like, man, I'm missing a whole audience of people right now. Yeah. And so I started researching and Googling and YouTube and months just deep diving in. How do I do this thing? And so here we are today and 5 years later and still rocking and rolling. I just have the Erik Allen Show and just released episode 186, I think, this last week, man. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey, man. I love podcasting. I love the relationships that come out of it. The impact, I didn't realize was going to be so big when I started. It was I just wanted to have conversations, and the whole concept of the question of like, why do you want to get punched in the face? I was asking the fighters, it relates to it relates to entrepreneurs as well and men as well. So I asked that same question to entrepreneurs when they get on my show, like, why do you want to get punched in the face? And as entrepreneurs, we get punched in the face all the time. We get we get rejected, we lose things, we fail, but we keep going. What is it that drives us to go further and become successful?
Yeah, absolutely. So true, right? And every day, I always say that if you truly want to learn everything you can about yourself, get married, start a job, start a career business, and have kids. Totally. That can go wrong, will go wrong, and totally. You will find out what you're made of, brother. If you you do those three things, especially if you do them all at the same time. Yep. And life just goes that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you book big names for your podcast. So how do you go about doing that work, and how do you do that for other folks?
Man, this is such a great question. So when I first started podcasting, I was asking people to come on my show. I did the same thing that 99% of people do when they're requesting people to come on their show. They have this template that they just change the first name on, they email that to them or they send them a DM and that's it, right? And I was doing that for a while, but I wasn't having success with it. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, man, how can I, I've been in sales for 20 years. I'm like, how do I think outside the box? How do I start doing this, right? How do I start making a bigger impact? And so literally what I did was I would pull out my phone and I would do a 30-second video. That's it, 30 seconds. And I would speak directly to the person I'm asking to come on my show. And I would mention things that they had going on. Hey, man, I just saw you released your book. Hey, I just saw this post. I really loved it. So I literally speak into my phone about like, Ed, what's going on, man? It's Erik Allen out here in Coeur d'Alene. I know that you have a house out here and just wanted to say, man, I'm proud of you. You're doing some awesome things. I saw you just dropped your new book, Power of One More. I'd love to have you come on my podcast so that we can promote that thing for you. Let me know if that what time works and we'll make it happen. Boom, 30 seconds. Like, that's it. I send that to them in Instagram DM and 99% of my guests have been booked that way. Do not send a templated message. Always a 30-second video. I don't put any text in there. I literally just send the video because it triggers curiosity. So people are like, why is this guy sending me a video? Right. And then when they realize that it's actually personalized to them, it's not like one of those guru guys that have this generic message, right? It's actually personalized to them. It is actually showing them, hey, I want to bring value to you. That's what helps them go, yeah, maybe this guy's legit. I want to get on his show. And that's how I've been able to book those names.
Outstanding. And what a great thing. Like you said, thinking outside the box, man, like just doing something a little bit different. And so many of us, right. And as I've been doing podcasting now, getting into my second full year of doing it, about 2.5 years in total. And a lot of them a lot of guys, gurus out there sell templates, and you're tweaking, names here and there. But the struggle that I've always had as well is, how do you personalize this? Because when you're on the other side of the microphone, like, how do you want to be approached, right? Did they take enough time to really understand who you are and what you bring to the table and what kind of value that you can give them as well? I think that piece of advice, that tidbit is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's huge, man. I think like when people reach out to me on, I get DMs on Instagram and LinkedIn all the time. And when they send me a video that's not generic or it's not specific to me, it's just this generic video. And then they'll like say, hey, Erik, check this out, right? I'm like, I laugh. I'm like, I have to mess with them because I'm like, dude, if you're going to take the time to send me something, take the time to actually know what I am. Like most people send me these pitches in LinkedIn and they'll say, oh man, I want to help your business do this. And I'm like, cool. What's my business do? And then they never respond back, right? Because they don't do the work. So when you take the time to show the people that you're interested in them, that's what helps close that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's obviously that you've got lots of passion and totally authentic. Tell me about some of the best advice that somebody has ever given you in the past and how that has really changed and shaped what you're doing today.
Man, I'm going to revert back to Ed again because my conversation with him impacted my life so much. It was that conversation that Ed was actually the person that got me that started my new podcast. But he told me when I was on the phone, he's like, look, Erik, we always have to be canny. It's CANI, constant and never ending improvement. And so when I wake up in the morning, I go, man, what can I improve on today? Like I have this black book that I write down my affirmations. I write down my goals and I write my to-do list every single morning when I get to my desk. It's a non-negotiable for me. I write that stuff down. And in that to-do list, I'm like, okay, which one of these can I improve on today? And right now I'm going through some affiliate marketing coaching and things like that. And so the best advice that I ever heard, I need to constantly and never ending improvement in my life. Like I need to have that passion, that fire on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Love that piece. And it's so true. Right. And that's truly that type of mindset is really all about, the Japanese word they'd call that Kaizen, right?
Yes.
Never ending improvement, right? It's always looking for those fine tune adjustments. It's not talking about major leaps of change. It's those little habits that you're talking about, the non-negotiable. What is the non-negotiable we have for ourselves? And I think far too many of us men don't have enough of those non-negotiables, if any. And so we wonder why 2023 won't be any different than 2022 because we haven't put some of these pieces in place. And obviously you're doing that work, man.
Well, thank you.
Is there any books that really, over the years, have there been any books that really changed your life as well, on top of the mentors and folks that you speak with on your podcast?
Yeah, dude, there's a book called In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by Mark Batterson. And if you haven't read that book, Mark Batterson's a Christian author. You don't need to be a Christian to understand this book. The concept of this book is very much, as men, we need to step out there, man. And we need to push fear to the side. And I've read that book several times. I have this Lion Chasers manifesto that he did on this card that I look at every morning. Look, that's an amazing book, and it will motivate you as a man to go, man, what am I doing? Like, what's my priorities? How can I step forward and step through fear and chase those goals, dreams, and purpose that are put on my life, right?
Yeah, and love that. Boy, I've never heard of that author, and just the title's too long. Mark, it's Patterson, right?
Batterson with a B.
Patterson, right on.
Yep. And he's got In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day is the first one, and then I think the follow-up to that is Chase the Lion. He's an amazing author. Wild at Heart is another one. John Eldridge. That book there will be a game changer for you as men as well.
Yeah. And when I've asked this question to other folks, I usually get some of the old classics. So this is phenomenal. Thank you so much for enlightening me on this book. And it'll definitely be one of the ones that'll show up on the book of the month here with our Band of Brothers group. So
right on.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Listen, what would so you've had some success in your life now, things are moving well. How do you define that for yourself? How do you define success?
Man, I love this question because success, a lot of times people go, well, it's amount of money that I make and things like that. And for me, yeah, that's great. Success for me is being able to break those chains of divorce, abuse, addiction, and rejection. Like, my family will never have to experience divorce. It's just not something that will come up. My wife and I have had many conversations about that. We had many conversations about that before we got married. Like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And when we said, I do, I meant it. And so my kids are almost 13, almost 10, and they've seen us argue. They've seen us make up. They've seen us kiss and dance into the kitchen, right? But they'll never experience the divorce. If we look at my parents and my wife's parents, married and divorced 5-6 times.
Yeah.
And, that causes so much of a mental issue on kids. Looking back now, I'm like, man, I was messed up for a long time because of that.
Yeah.
And so my version of success is making sure that my kids never have to experience the life that I had, and set them up with a better life, and not set them up financially, but mentally go, hey, you're strong. You can get through the hard times, and you keep fighting. And then just changing that legacy of the Allen tribe, like I said, for generations to come.
Yeah, man. What I really appreciate about that is that really you're coming in, you're focusing on the mindset for the kids and for yourself, obviously. And because truly, when we have the mindset that, hey, if things don't work out, well, we can always get divorced, then how does that show up in other parts of our lives, right? Do we have that, truly to have that commitment that no matter how tough it is, like your question is to your entrepreneurs, what happens when you get punched in the face?
Yeah.
If it's just always going to be crumble, and we're not going to face that lion and do what we need to do, then how do we expect to grow as men and as leaders? And so proud that to hear that from you. And I think that's such a great lesson.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Right on. So what does legacy mean to you? You're building this work now, things are coming along. If you were to think back now and you were to write your tombstone, what would that legacy message be?
Man. I think the legacy message here is breaking the chains, like creating a new environment for my family. It's weird if I look back at my grandparents, right? Our grandparents were great. They were married for a long time. And then this generation of kids at that point, it like all hell broke loose, and so a legacy for me is building back up that generation that was my grandparents, of staying married for 50, 60, 70 years, and creating a new legacy for my kids, and helping them to understand, like, it doesn't have to end in divorce. You don't have to, break up because of dumb things, right? You have to stick it out. If you commit to things, you have to do it. And so that legacy for me is making sure that my kids understand that we're tougher than we always think we are. Yeah. And that whatever we're going through, like, there's a purpose and a plan in it. And what can we learn from it? And how can we adjust and pivot to make sure that we don't experience that again? Right. So for me, that's a legacy, is making sure that my kids just don't have to experience the things that I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. Truly love that. Listen, we had a great chat here today, but if there was one thing that maybe we didn't speak about and you wanted our listeners to have a takeaway, what would that be?
Oh man, there's two things that I just really am passionate about. And one is turn off the news. The news is the worst thing in the world. They have their own agenda. I turned off the news 10 years ago, and it's changed my life forever. I don't even watch news I don't follow news on Facebook. I have no idea what's happening. And then the other thing is just quit judging people. I think so many people place judgment. For me personally, I don't care who you voted for, or if you got the vaccination or not, or masker or not. That doesn't matter to me. My job is just to love you where you're at. And then through that, you'll start to ask questions, and then I can help you, or I can guide you and say, man, you want out of this pit that you're feeling, man, come join me in this group, or come go to church with me. Right. Like, our job is just to love people where they're at and just stop judging people. So turn off the news, stop judging people. I think if we all did that, man, the world would change.
Absolutely. So just love that. I just want to say thanks, Erik, for being on the show today. And you know what? You've shown us that no matter what our history is, it doesn't matter what that is, we can define what our future will be. So if men are interested in getting a hold of you and wanting to participate in some of your programs, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, my website is erikallenmedia.com. I've got a full resources page there of all the books that I like, all the books that I follow, guests that have been on there that have books. I have resources for my courses and different just things on there. Some free, some are paid. And then, so I'm big on Instagram, not big as in like I have millions of followers, but like I followed that probably more than any other social media platform. So if you shoot me a DM, I respond to every DM and every comment. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out. I love connecting and networking with new people. And that's why I'm passionate about podcasting, because it's just opened up the door for awesome relationships with guys like yourself and opportunities to be able to help people and things like that, man. So yeah, Instagram, Erik G. Allen, it's ERIK. And then GALLEN, and then erikallenmedia.com.
Right on. Well, I'm going to make sure all that information is in the show notes so people can reach out to you. I just want to say once again, thanks so much for being on the show, and keep up the great work, my friend.
Thank you so much, man. Truly an honor to be here, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.